I walked into my CEO's office expecting to get fired. But instead, I found her sitting on the floor, crying like her world had just collapsed. And what she asked me to do next, I swear, it changed everything I thought I knew about people, about power, and even about myself. So tell me honestly, if your boss, the most powerful person in your company, looked you in the eyes and begged you for help with something deeply personal, would you say yes, or would you walk away? I'm a single dad. That's probably the most important thing you need to know about me. Everything I do, every decision I make, it all comes back to my 6-year-old daughter, Lily. Her mom left when she was just a baby, and since then, it's been me and her against the world. I work as a mid-level manager in a big corporate firm. Nothing glamorous, just enough to keep the bills paid and food on the table. My days are a constant juggling act between deadlines, school pickups, late-night dinners, and bedtime stories. It's exhausting, but when Lily smiles at me like I'm her whole universe, it feels worth it. Now my CEO, her name is Evelyn. She's the kind of person you don't expect to have problems. Always perfectly dressed, always composed, always 10 steps ahead of everyone else. People feared her, respected her, admired her, but no one really knew her. I'd only spoken to her a handful of times in meetings, and every time, it felt like she could see right through you. Cold, sharp, untouchable. That's how I saw her. That morning started like any other disaster. Lily had spilled juice all over her uniform. I burned the toast, and I was already late for an important presentation. By the time I dropped her off at school, I was running on stress and caffeine. I got to the office just in time, but my boss pulled me aside and said Evelyn wanted to see me immediately. No explanation, no context. My stomach dropped. When the CEO calls you in without warning, it's never good news. I kept replaying every mistake I could have made. Missed deadlines, small errors, anything that could put me on her radar in a bad way. By the time I reached her office door, my hands were actually shaking. I knocked once, quietly, and when I didn't hear anything, I assumed she said, "Come in." I opened the door and froze. She wasn't behind her desk. She wasn't even standing. She was sitting on the floor, back against the wall, her heels kicked off to the side, her face buried in her hands. And she was crying. Not the quiet, controlled kind of crying you'd expect from someone like her. No, this was raw, broken. Like she'd been holding it in for too long and couldn't anymore. For a second, I thought I'd walked into the wrong office. I stepped back, ready to close the door, but she looked up, and our eyes met. I'll never forget that look. She didn't look like a CEO. She didn't look powerful or intimidating. She looked human, fragile, lost. "I'm sorry," I said quickly, already backing out. "I'll come back later." "Wait," she said, her voice cracked. And something about that stopped me. I hesitated, then slowly stepped inside and closed the door behind me. Neither of us spoke for a few seconds. The silence felt heavy, awkward, almost wrong. I didn't know where to look. This wasn't something employees were supposed to see. "You weren't supposed to see me like this," she finally said, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "I didn't see anything," I replied, trying to give her an out. She let out a weak, humorless laugh. "You're not very good at lying." I didn't respond. I just stood there, unsure whether to stay or leave. Then she said something that completely threw me off. "You have a daughter, right?" I blinked. "Yeah, Lily," she nodded slowly, like she was confirming something in her mind. Then she took a deep breath, stood up, and walked over to her desk. For a moment, she looked like she was putting her usual mask back on, but it wasn't quite the same. "I need your help," she said. That sentence alone felt surreal. The CEO? Asking me for help? With what? I asked cautiously. She hesitated. And for the first time I saw fear in her eyes. "My son," she said quietly. "He's sick." Everything in me shifted. She explained that her son, Daniel, had been diagnosed with a serious condition a few months ago. Something that required constant care, attention, and time. Time she didn't have. Between running the company and dealing with everything else, she'd barely been able to be there for him. "I thought I could handle it," she admitted. "I thought I could manage both, but I can't, and he's starting to notice." Her voice broke again. "I don't know how to be what he needs." I didn't know what to say. This was the last thing I expected to hear. Then she looked at me, really looked at me, and said something that caught me completely off guard. "I've seen you with your daughter," she said. "At the company event last month. The way you talked to her, the way she looked at you, I don't have that with my son, and I don't know how to fix it." I felt my chest tighten. "So, what are you asking me?" I said slowly. She took a deep breath. "I want you to help me learn how to be a parent." I stared at her, convinced I'd misunderstood. "You want me to, what?" "Teach me," she said. "Guide me. Show me what I'm doing wrong. I don't care how it sounds. I need help." For a moment, I didn't know whether to laugh, refuse, or just walk out. This was insane, completely outside anything I'd ever imagined. But then I thought about Lily, about how lost I felt when her mom left, about how I had no idea what I was doing at first, about the mistakes, the sleepless nights, the fear of failing her, and suddenly, Evelyn didn't look like a CEO anymore. She looked like a parent who was scared of losing her child. So that was the situation I was in. A single dad, barely holding his own life together, being asked by one of the most powerful women in the company to teach her how to love her own son. Before I tell you what I decided to do, I want you to pause for a second. Put yourself in my shoes. Would you take that risk? Would you step into your boss's personal life like that? Or would you walk away and pretend none of it ever happened? I wish I could say I made the decision quickly. I didn't. Part of me wanted to say no immediately. This wasn't my responsibility. It could get messy, complicated, maybe even dangerous for my career. But another part of me, the part that knew what it felt like to struggle as a parent, couldn't ignore her. "I'll help," I said finally. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for hours. "Thank you." And just like that, everything changed. It started small. She invited me over to her house one evening, not as an employee, but as, I guess, a mentor? That still feels strange to say. I was nervous walking in. Her house was exactly what you'd expect. Huge, spotless, almost too perfect. But it didn't feel warm. It didn't feel like a home. Then I met Daniel. He was quiet, pale, sitting on the couch with a tablet in his hands. He barely looked up when we walked in. "Daniel," Evelyn said gently. "This is a friend of mine." He gave a small nod, then went back to his screen. And in that moment, I understood everything she meant. He wasn't angry. He wasn't loud. He was distant, disconnected, just alone. Over the next few weeks, I showed her little things. How to talk to him without making it feel like an interrogation. How to listen, really listen, without trying to fix everything immediately. How to just be there. It wasn't easy for her. She kept slipping back into CEO mode, trying to control conversations, solve problems instead of understanding feelings. But she tried. That's what mattered. And slowly, things started to change. Daniel began to open up. Just a little at first. A few words here and there. Then longer conversations. One night, I watched as he laughed at something she said, and she looked at him like she'd just witnessed a miracle. But the real turning point came a month later. Daniel had a bad episode. Worse than anything before. He was scared, in pain, and for the first time, he didn't push her away. He reached for her and she didn't hesitate. She held him, comforted him, stayed with him the entire night. The next day, she called me. "I did it," she said, her voice shaking. "I didn't freeze. I didn't panic. I just stayed." I smiled. "That's what he needed." "No," she said softly. "That's what I needed too." After that, everything felt different. She wasn't perfect. No parent is. But she was present, real, human. And as for me, something unexpected happened. She didn't just learn from me. She helped me too. She adjusted my workload, made sure I had time for Lily, even set up better policies in the company for working parents. Not because she had to, but because she finally understood. In the end, what started as one of the strangest moments of my life turned into something I never saw coming. A connection. A reminder that behind every title, every position, every powerful face, there's still a person dealing with their own battles. So, was I wrong for getting involved? For stepping into my boss's personal life? Honestly, I don't think so, because sometimes, the right thing isn't the easy thing. And sometimes, the people who seem the strongest are the ones who need help the most. If you were on my side in this story, go ahead and like this video. And if you enjoy real, emotional stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done in my place? Let me know in the comments below. I'll see you all in the next story.